Hi,
Hi.
Sandy.
Hi. We made
Hello.
it.
We made it, yes, finally. Just to let everyone know and to welcome everyone to another live Q&A.
Oh, hold on. Let me shut.
Yep. As you can see today, I have Sandi Procter with me. And for those of you that don't know, but I guess that's pretty difficult, Sandy is the LTA Deputy President at the moment, and a very important volunteer for the LTA and the British tennis overall. For a very long time. Let's say you've been involved in tennis and British tennis for a very long time. So thank you again for doing this.
My pleasure.
And just to get it started, I just wanted, if you can, let everyone know how your, let's say, how your story and relationship with tennis started.
Oh wow. Well, I didn't play tennis as a kid. As a primary school kid, I only played school sport, and in fact, my passion was football. So, and in my day, girls weren't allowed to play football, and so I just had to pretend to be a boy, haircut short, played in the boys' team. All the boys didn't mind. So I didn't touch tennis until I went to grammar school, where I played every sport possible. So lacrosse, in fact, was my biggest passion. And tennis was up there as my second favourite. So I played in the school team and loved it along with other sports. And my first ever tennis club was, in fact, in Middlesex. It was Ealing Tennis Club, where I joined because my first teaching job was at Haberdashers' Asks when it was at Ealing, and joined Ealing Tennis Club. And at my playing in test, I met my husband, my future husband, who was in fact a very good player. And that's how I got into tennis.
So you had to step up your game a little bit.
I had to step up my game. I had to learn quite a lot, yeah.
But for example, you mentioned that you started playing tennis as in a team environment in a way.
Yeah.
Do you think that made a lot of, do you think you liked it more because it was a team sport at the time? Do you think you would have liked it as much if it was more singles oriented, let's say?
I think I would have liked any sport at all, to be honest. My other passion, but not at school, was in fact table tennis. I was talent spotted, of all things, at a Butlins holiday camp. And so I had that singles individual environment from that. But yes, I would say that my love would be of a team. I was a much better team player in general. So lacrosse was something I ended up being much better at. And I think that's because it was a team sport. But yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about this before. You started as a PE teacher, actually. How did you make that transition from being a PE teacher to a tennis coach to being a
Well, it was a bit accidental, to be honest. My husband's job moved us up to Aberdeen, and we joined a tennis club because you can, can't you? I mean, tennis is so lovely. You've done it. You know, you make friends through tennis wherever you are in the world. So off we go to Aberdeen, join a tennis club. There is no tennis coach in Aberdeen, ever.
Really?
Never been one, and they didn't have one. And so if there are any parents listening, this is how bad it was. All the parents were coaching their own children.
Wow. That's something very unusual.
So they begged me to coach their kids. And so I became a tennis coach. I also became a squash coach as well. And it became very handy because ultimately my husband's job was in oil. So we moved around. So I subsequently coached tennis in Dubai, Cairo, Lincolnshire, Aberdeen again, and then back down in London. So yeah, I got into coaching quite accidentally.
Where would you say that you like coaching the most?
Oh, that's such a tough question because when I was younger, of course, coaching in Dubai was fabulous. The weather, even though it got very hot, the expat life. It was early days. It was not the Dubai you're all thinking of right now. There was no high rise. The golf courses were made of sand. We were there in the sort of early days. I was the only female tennis coach there. And so probably I would say I had the best time there.
Mm-hmm.
But I've probably had the most satisfaction from coaching in the UK. Oh, and in Dubai also, I coached Mahesh Bhupathi. Now, does anybody remember Mahesh? He was world #1 doubles player.
Oh, wow.
But he was only 10 years old, so you know I can't claim too much on that. So it was great fun. In this country, my coaching has I've learned such a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Dubai, I was on my own and I did whatever I thought was right. But my coaching in this country has been so well supported by learning opportunities from the LTA. That I probably in the end would say I've enjoyed more. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I became a very specialist coach
Mm-hmm.
in the sort of under-8s.
How did that happen?
Well, when I was in Dubai, short tennis arrived in Great Britain from Sweden in about 1982.
Oh, from Sweden, okay.
Yeah, and I picked it up. I mean, it was played on a badminton court with big, nasty plastic bats. But, you know, it was wonderful and I loved it. It meant you could teach smaller kids how to play tennis.
Was it aimed at young, like at kids,
Yeah.
or was it also for adults at the time?
No, it was entirely aimed for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it and I became a bit of, you know, more keen on that. So wherever I went after Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
I just really did what was then called short tennis. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you're saying that it came from Sweden, because I think often I think a lot of people think that the system, the mini tennis, let's say, that we know today came from France somehow.
Oh, well, I could kind of put that straight. There's no doubt that Sweden introduced us all to the sponge ball
Mm-hmm.
and played on badminton courts. France did make up something called mini tennis. Well, not exactly the words, because in this country we had mini soccer, mini hockey,
Okay.
mini everything. But they did have a mini tennis system, but they didn't call it red, orange and green.
Okay.
So they just had, it was mini tennis and then intermediate. What we created in the UK, and I think the majority of people that know the facts know that we actually created the red, orange and green stuff. And so, yeah, that's how it is. So we didn't create mini tennis, the French probably did, but we created red, orange and green.
And how did that happen? How did the idea of mini, like a red and orange and then green,
well, it's a pretty funny story, really, because I was coaching at a club in Kent at the time called Park Langley, and we were doing short tennis. And honestly, the program was growing like mad. So when I got there were about 20 or 30 people, kids and adults, on a coaching program. In 10 years, it grew to 2,000 a week. And it all really from short tennis, because the kids grew, their parents played, and it just grew and grew. And so we just were doing something really good. And the LTA noticed we were doing something good because we had some very good, talented players. I don't know if you know Naomi Cavaday, Nick Cavaday, a whole raft of players like that were coming out of our program. And so the LTA asked me to go and help them change short tennis to mini tennis. So off I toddled around the country and I talked to lots of coaches, and we all agreed that we needed 3 stages, because at the time you played with a sponge ball, but your next step was to play with a yellow tennis ball.
Oh wow, that's a big gap.
When you were about 9 or 10, and it was such a jump that lots of kids just gave up because they couldn't do it. and the ball manufacturers had made a couple of in-between balls. One was called Transition.
Mm-hmm.
So we all agreed when I visited all these coaches, we needed 3 stages, all right? But we didn't know what to call them. So we had all sorts of ideas. But anyway, I was at a particular coaches meeting in North London. I'm back to Middlesex again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going home and I was stuck at some traffic lights on the Finchley High Road.
Yeah, I think we all know those, yeah.
For ages. And I was just staring at the lights and went, that's it, red, orange and green.
Huh.
And I tried it out with a few people. I said, what do you think? And they went, yeah, sounds good. Didn't know where to go red, orange and green or green, orange and red, but we decided red because red is a multi-gender colour. Boys and girls like it. Green means go into tennis. So, and I took it back to the powers that be at the LTA, and it was quite funny because I presented the idea and one of them said, do you think it's a bit complicated? And I went, do you drive a car?
Yeah, no, it makes sense actually. Once you,
So, we sold the idea to them, and then they appointed me as LTA mini tennis manager, and I led a team, a great team of coaches and coach head tutors. We developed all the coaching resources. We did 60 road shows. I don't know if any of your listeners right now were on them, but certainly I remember Andrew Lewandowski coming to my road show in Sutton. Do you remember that, Andrew? And we did those, and we just kept rolling it out. I mean, it wasn't immediately convincing, particularly to performance coaches.
Yeah.
The less performance-minded coaches loved it because they just saw their business growing.
Yeah. And it was more accessible for children, I guess.
And the other thing we developed with it was that whereas short tennis could only be played on badminton courts, we invented between us, along with a ball manufacturer in Bath, we created that red outdoor ball.
Yeah.
So that made it possible to play mini red outside, and we said it could be played across the court instead of only on a badminton court. So it made it more, like you say, it made it more accessible. More clubs could join in. More coaches started to say, wow, this is so great for business.
Yeah, you can put a lot more courts, mini red courts on one single court. So.
Yeah, more kids, and they were loving it more. The whole point was to, get more kids playing, but also make that more gradual transition from the red court through to yellow, meant that the kids stayed in the game for longer. So the coaches were, they were loving it, absolutely loving it.
How did you agree on the sizes of the court?
Well, we were largely influenced by the two things. One, that short tennis was played on a badminton court, and the French had built actually what they call mini tennis courts, which were the size of exactly the same as a badminton court, really, about 12 by 6, whatever. And so we've had to adapt it because across the tennis court is in fact only 11 by 5.
Yeah.
But we kind of broadly said it doesn't really matter as long as the kids know and the net's right, then, we can be flexible about this. When it got to orange, we only originally put on a orange line halfway between the service line and the baseline. It wasn't until we had a later Belgian influence, a guy called Steve Martins came over to head up performance, and he insisted, because he'd done a lot of research, and he asked for coaches to put down orange tram lines to narrow the court as well as shorten it. But in my day it was only shortened. So that's how we decided, and then green of course speaks for itself. And then what happened, the ball manufacturers, we talked to them at the time and told them about the red, orange and green idea, and it was great. They agreed to colour the balls or mark the balls with a coloured spot or a coloured logo, and they joined in, and it was great.
How long ago was that?
Well, we launched mini tennis in 2002. Did the road shows in 2003, 4 and 5. So it was a gradual thing over about, that part of the noughties, as they call them. Yeah.
How do you see it changed now, let's say mini tennis, in terms
Well,
of...
yeah, it's it's been embedded into a new thing called LTA Youth, which is great because mini tennis, when we did it, we were only briefed to create something for kids. But, you know, all the time we were creating it, we knew this was great for adults, teenagers. But of course, the word mini tennis rather implies it's only for children. So it's no good persuading a 15-year-old or a mum to play mini tennis. So the LTA have had a look at it, and I've been involved a little bit in the process, but it's largely been down to the team. And they've created, obviously, a more encompassing tots to teens youth program. So it's a lovely framework with a couple of additional stages. So they've added the blue, red, orange, green, and then, of course, calling tennis yellow. It was silly in our days. We would call it mini tennis and then real tennis. It wasn't real tennis. But I love that it's now blue, red, orange, green, and yellow. And of course, all the resources that have been made with all the videos and the support are fantastic. So I'm very pleased to see it just evolve.
Well, I think it's evolved quite a lot even in the last few years, because I think more adults are playing with, less pressurized tennis balls, and I think they're used more in courses for adults as well. So,
well, I would love to see that even more. That would be my dream, would be that secondary school kids are very happy to play mini tennis red in their, shouldn't call it mini red, just red.
Red. Yeah.
Just call it red, in their sports hall on badminton courts. I'd love to see more adults using a green ball as their recreational game. They'll have, largely they'll have longer rallies, more fun, and actually better fitness. So I'd love to see in the future that it becomes more widespread. It's happening quite a lot, as in the States about, before lockdown, last summer. And I did notice in the indoor centres there, nearly all the teenagers, recreational teenagers, are all playing with an orange or a green ball. And their retention levels are much higher as a result. Even some of their school team players were doing that. So I think in time we'll have a culture that says you don't have to move just because you've got older, and that the yellow ball game isn't the only game to play. You play the game of tennis that is best for you.
And what would you maybe tell coaches or performance coaches that are, let's say, maybe some of them might still be reluctant in using let's say, the appropriate color ball for the appropriate age, if the player is good enough, let's say, or if they could play with a yellow ball? Well, why would you tell them to kind of still stick to the appropriate color ball, or why is it not that good to jump to the yellow ball too early?
Well, I think first of all, you're right. Some performance coaches are reluctant, and when you look at people like Andy Murray, who, by the way, did play short tennis in his day, and because when I was in Aberdeen, he was playing short tennis, and his brother, but they largely were playing with their mum. So when you're A, that good, and B, you've got a coach at the other end, of course you can play with a yellow ball early on. But what we really want is our kids to play with their mates. And then that is much harder to play with the yellow ball and have fun. There's no doubt that some kids are massively more talented and more ready to move on earlier. Um, but I think I would recommend that you look at their ability to play the game. So can they use tactics and work a point and control the ball into the right space if they are playing with a ball that moves quite fast and bounces quite high? Or are they, is all they're doing coping? If they're coping with a yellow ball, for me, that's not enough, because they're not learning to craft the game and play the points. If they're playing with a ball that they can control and move and craft the rallies, then for my money, they're learning more than if they're with a yellow ball that they can't do that with.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Because I think we see quite a lot of maybe young players that play with a yellow ball, but they are just coping, like you're saying, not actually playing the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes parents are at fault for that, because they think that they should be moving up. And actually, it's this always thinking of the long-term goal rather than the short-term goal, because you don't get that much benefit from being able to do it all young. It's where you get to when you're a little bit older, and have you then built on the foundations that you needed, or and you know, there is a danger if they go too fast. They will start judging themselves, the children, particularly the girls. They'll judge themselves as not being that good, or they're losing, or and you know, you can lose them if they lose their confidence.
Yeah, I was going to ask why, let's say, because you mentioned the girls, that they kind of tend to give up a little bit more maybe than the boys. Why would you say that happens?
Well, I think in my experience with girls is that they are far more judgmental of themselves, and they want to look good and hit the right shots, and they judge their own improvements, and I think they, if they feel they're not improving, gaining in confidence, and perhaps winning. I think probably winning is still important, but of course girls are probably more motivated by the social side anyway. So I think that can be the danger. I think we've got other things in our British environment that are a threat to our sport anyway. So there are things like other sports, exams and schoolwork. You know, a lot of girls might feel more conscientious about needing to spend more time with their work, and they start looking at what they have to do, or they want to spend more time with their friends. So I think there can be some tough decisions for both boys and girls. But
in terms of kind of being attracted maybe to other sports, is it just going back a little bit to what we talked at the start? Is it because they're, again, like team sports, like netball or hockey maybe?
Yeah, well, yes, I think so. It's difficult to know. Girls that are, if we're talking about the talented end of girls, they're usually good at anything. If they're good at tennis, they are going to be good at almost anything. We are lucky in that tennis is such a world famous sport and an attractive sport, and our top players are fantastic role models. So we are lucky. But I do think girls can be attracted by and influenced by what their friends do. Standing out alone and being the only tennis player when all their friends are in the netball team, that's quite a tough one.
There's a sort of isolation maybe. Someone is actually saying that girls prefer the social side, not the competitive side early on.
And I think that's important for us all to recognise, and wherever we can is create a social environment within what we do. You know, travel as teams, even though they play as individuals when they get to a tournament.
Yeah.
But and enter team, play team sports off the court. You know, there's always a field or a playground or something next to a tennis centre or something. Just go and kick a ball around or play on the netball court and create the team spirit, even though you're playing an individual game. Yeah.
From your experiences, say, how do you see children now? Children that are Red Bull, Orange Bull, or Green Bull, how have they changed compared to how they were in 2002, let's say, when you started?
Well, I don't know that. Oh, I don't know. Have they changed at all? About 12 years ago, maybe more. No, probably 10 or 12 years ago, I filmed a red tournament, and I filmed the final from the top of a umpire's chair. And one of the coaches of one of the boys in this final asked if he could get permission to put it on YouTube. Well, that's way beyond my capabilities. So I said, well, you get the permission of the parents and go ahead. And he put it on the YouTube. And if you Google the best mini tennis rally ever, or it might be the best mini tennis point ever, you will get a rally between two boys who are in fact now 18. They were only about 7 or 8 at the time. That will blow your mind. It was a very, very long rally. There's a dodgy umpire's call in the middle of it, by the way. But it was fantastic. There was net play, there was width play, there was an approach volley, there was even a sort of an attempt at, it was super. And I think I would be very surprised to see anything better than that at Red.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got memories of coaching Red where some of the Red kids were fantastic. I mean, really. I think where we have changed is I think players are better now at Orange and Green than they were when I was busy coaching.
Okay.
Because I think they moved through Orange very, very quickly, got to Green, and then went quickly to Yellow. And I don't think they really developed their whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now I go and watch some Orange tournaments, and I'm enamored by how well the kids are playing Orange. I think Orange and Green have got better.
Do you think the coaching has changed a little bit?
I don't know. Maybe. I think maybe the kids just play more games,
mm-hmm.
and they learn their skills through the game needs, and so it somehow is more meaningful. So rather than just learn to hit endless forehands,
yeah,
the top spin or whatever you want to do in the way of the shape of the shot, I think the game has become the reason you do it.
okay.
And I think that means it means more to the kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's good. I mean, it's a good it's a positive, let's say, outcome. It's great.
Yeah.
And just going a little bit to your role, let's say, in British tennis, you've done volunteering for a very long time.
Yeah.
How did you go from coaching to helping the LTA and just doing a little bit more with the LTA
as a volunteer?
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing. I probably have volunteered all my life in a funny sort of sense. In that I've always wanted. I'm a born organizer, and I've always wanted to organize competitions and stuff. Even at school, I was always doing that. So my first volunteering probably was running short tennis competitions and later mini ones. And then in Kent, about 30 years ago, I was asked if I would go and sit on the LTA Kent Council. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what that was, but I duly went along to meetings, and I drank the tea and ate the biscuits and listened to all these people talking. And I gradually got more involved. I'm an absolute mug for offering to help. So I would help with the development committee, or I would help with the fundraising committee or whatever. And I got more and more involved. And I must say, I really enjoyed it. I met some really nice people. Volunteers are very lovely people. They generally give of their time because they don't have to do it. And then about 9 years ago, Kent asked me if, well, they appointed me to be their representative at the LTA Council. And yeah, I didn't know all that much about that, but I went along, and that was very, very inspiring and enjoyable. And I met people like me from all around the country. And again, I gradually got involved in more and more bits and pieces and joined the Tennis Development Committee, and great to be involved in the cutting edge. And then I would be asked by people who worked at the LTA still, because I was no longer working at the LTA, which is why I could do this. In fact, I had a 9-year spell during this time managing the Bromley Tennis Centre. And of course, I was really lucky that I could run volunteering alongside my managing job. In fact, I hardly knew what I was doing when, really. It's not like I did my managing job 9 to 5 and then I became a volunteer. They just sort of molded into the same day. Yeah, and I was lucky that, you know, the people I worked with all knew that. So I got more and more involved at the LTA, and then somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Oh, Sandi, you should stand for a board position." Well, that was I knew what the LTA board was, so I did. I put myself forward. I had to give a little speech, and I was elected. And so that was 4 years ago. So I was on the board. And then in 2019, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You know, you should put yourself up for Deputy President." Wow. But I did. And yeah, I had several interviews with the chairman and the CEO and the president. And they chose me. And I felt I was gobsmacked, really, in that it's just not anything I would have ever imagined.
How has that been, though? Because it has happened when, you know, all of this with COVID happened. So
yeah, that was a bit unlucky, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah, the timing wasn't the best, let's say. But how was it? What were you to do still?
Yeah. It's all right. In January and February last year, I managed to get to a few events because as Deputy President, I was going to attend some awards presentations and visit some counties. In fact, I was expected to be at the Middlesex presentation.
Yeah.
John Love invited me along to present the County Cup Race Trophy. And but yeah, just missed it, didn't we? We didn't quite get it in.
What happened?
Yeah. So yeah, and then from lockdown, yeah, we've been really busy. President has a kind of close-knit team. So I'm the deputy, and then we have 3 others who we do quite a lot together. And we've reviewed things. We've looked at communications. We've really helped the colleagues with all the COVID support, particularly the support for counties.
Yeah.
I've written lots of documents and guidance notes, and I write a news bulletin for all the councillors around the country, and we keep in touch with them. So we haven't wasted our time. We've done quite a lot, but we haven't been able to get out and about. Normally, we would be going, or I would be going to the Davis Cup and the Billie Jean Cup, King Cup as it is now. I have attended the ITF AGM, albeit by Zoom, and the Tennis Europe AGM by Zoom. And so we've done some, but I've missed the networking with people and the meeting people. I've really missed that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people really crave for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is there to come in, let's say, for this year?
Well, for this year, all being well, if we get released by the spring, then I'll probably start picking up some visits. the president does the majority of the visits around awards and stuff, but I act as a deputy for him, and I try and get to know the people in the counties. We've got 38 counties, and it will be my job to attend as many of those county meetings as I can. And then obviously all the events. So yeah, hopefully Madrid, Davis Cup might happen, and Wimbledon, and who knows what we'll get. So hopefully I'll pick it. And then things like the ITF AGM and the Tennis Europe, hopefully I'll get, because I'm actually quite inexperienced with the international world of tennis, and I need to learn quite a lot on that front.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and there are quite a few changes that are planned in that, in that sense. Are there any changes for British tennis, let's say, this year or maybe in the coming few years that you can actually talk about?
Oh, well,
you could say a little bit about.
I probably can't give any secrets away. I don't even know if I know.
Yeah.
But got things like the World Tennis Number coming up. Okay. I believe that's being launched at the end of this week. It's going to, I think, help quite a lot. I think quite a lot of the changes will be around the digital world, really. The website will be developed, and I think how we work will change. Even us counsellors in all the counties, we're meeting by Zoom because we've had to, but you know what? We're going to carry on doing that. Yeah. Because we're saving on travel time and, and expense and everything. So we've got to get a balance in the future between face-to-face sometimes because it's nice and networking's important, and then, but also for convenience and cost saving, time saving, then we'll probably carry on just using virtual. Yeah.
And going a bit towards the international aspect of tennis, let's say, what do you think are the 2 or 3 key moments that have put the British tennis on the international map, let's say?
Things I've been involved in, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, well, when we developed mini tennis, albeit, the red, orange and green concept, because the French developed mini tennis, but we did red, orange and green. I was asked to be on an ITF task force. At the time, tennis was really losing numbers across the world. And so they got the big nations together, and we met, so Australia, US, France, Germany, etc. We were all in a, and it was that group that actually adopted the red, orange and green thing. And once the Americans and the French had agreed to do it as well, it just flew. So there are about 150 countries around the world now who do red, orange and green. They may not call it mini tennis or youth or anything. They've got their own names for it, but they do red, orange and green.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky because for a number of years, I was jet setting to New York, South Africa, Australia, introducing red, orange and green to new nations. And in fact, I didn't go to Romania, come to think of it. I went to Bulgaria, and I went to Kiev and Tallinn. So, and I did workshops for coaches. So I think we've made quite a big impact on the world with red, orange and green, which is the thing I've been most involved in.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that where I'm from, Romania, I think it's being used right now quite a lot. I think a lot of coaches are using the let's say red, orange and green, and there are a lot of mini competitions.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
so I'm very happy about that.
And let's say moments that you weren't involved in, which ones do you remember?
Oh wow, that's a tough question. I think the LTA is in general a very innovative body, and I think we've probably made an impression on world tennis in many ways. I think we have been innovative. The World Tennis Numbers coming up, and we've played a large part of that. we're quite good at creating programs of all sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And LTA colleagues now are always presenting at European and world coaching conferences, because we always seem to be at the cutting edge of good things. And I think one of the best things I think we've influenced is probably coach education.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a fabulous coach education set up in this country. We've had coach licensing, now accreditation, for many years. And I think a lot of other countries look to us for how well we ran our system. And now, of course, I'm going to say that one of our best accomplishments is how good we are at safeguarding, compared to, say, other sports in this country. And I think so. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it's safeguarding. I think is quite an important thing, and a big thing in tennis. And I think it's just a question from someone, I believe, if a coach is renewing the license and they cannot get a DBS check now, if they would be okay when all of this COVID stuff ends, let's say.
That's a good question. It's a bit of an admin question, and I suggest they go to the website to find out, because this is changing all the time.
Yeah.
So, DBS was there, and then it came back, and then it was gone, and then it came back again. And of course, now it's difficult to do again.
Yeah.
And
I think the LTA is quite flexible.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not up to speed with the absolute latest on what to do about your DBS.
Yeah, but I think it's quite flexible, and the LTA is quite understanding in those situations. So I think we're all going to be fine.
Yeah, the thing to do, if that's a Middlesex coach asking, then ask John Love, he'll tell you.
And because you have quite a lot of experience with, let's say, mini tennis with red, orange, and green, when it comes to identifying children that could potentially be very good players, what would you say parents or coaches could look at?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's a very personal thing. I think coaches look at different things. I think we're all probably always look at athleticism and an eye for a ball as our first reference point. Does a kid move well, run well, jump, balance, and then can they hit a ball with control? I always think that's quite important, rather than just whacking it. I think after that, it's much more about loving the game and being able to work hard, but not thinking it's working hard, but they're doing it because they love it. So actually, it's funny, because I brought down a book in case you asked that question. Here's a book called A Few Wise Words.
Okay.
And our chairman of the board gave it to us all for Christmas. And it's about 22 high achieving people, a lot of them in sports, who have written their story of their journey. And I've read about half a dozen of them so far. People like Ben Ainsley, I think Kelly Holmes is in there, and various people. And there's a common factor that goes in that is related to your question. And that is, they are all saying they loved what they were doing so much that they were prepared to put the hard work in. And in turn, that became determination. And they've all said that they had incredibly supportive parents, but the parents only pointed them in the right direction and provided the opportunity. They did not tell them what to do.
Yeah.
So it was their own motivation. So I would say it's coaches, look for the athletic ones and the ones with an eye on the ball. The passion might not seem obvious when they're young.
Yeah.
Sometimes the passion and love for it grows. Certainly some of the kids that have come through my programs, I've thought worked hard, but they didn't seem to love it all that much. And then later they really did and did well. And then some very talented kids just went by the wayside because they didn't love it that much.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. And parents, I would say, just point them in the right direction, but let it be theirs.
And maybe listen to what they
Yeah.
what they say and what they want to do. Yeah.
But I do think it's different for every child, every family, and even every coach to an extent.
I think you've seen quite a lot of young tennis players along the line, let's say, and I think you've probably watched you know, famous players even when they were young. Could you see it then that they were gonna potentially become as good as they are now, maybe? Was there something that stood out, or?
I think sometimes I could see a potential, but I was never confident enough that it would be realised, depending on just how their life sort of went along. I was always attracted by the kid who didn't have such pretty shots, but they had grit and determination to get the ball back. A bit Simona Halep, if you like.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of determination. I was always keen, even if a kid didn't have style, if they just, you know, really went for every ball and tried all the time and never gave up. They were the kids that I really liked.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think quite a lot of us, let's say, maybe tend to have a better opinion about a child that has like nice shots.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily look at how they actually play the game or how determined they are.
And how they respond to all the different situations they're finding themselves in. Are they moaning because it's cold? Are they complaining at the referee because they're half an hour late getting on court? You know, are they having an argument with mum because they didn't put their favourite snack in? It's all of those kind of, you know, just adapting and getting on with things. I like that if I see that in kids.
That's very well said. And just to kind of finish a little on a little, let's say, quick note, and just to see if we can also find a little bit more about yourself.
Okay.
If you're okay to have a little or a few quick fire questions.
Okay.
Is that okay? Yeah?
All right.
Try it.
Go ahead.
Who is your favorite tennis player? Male or female? Or both?
I've already said her name, but I really like Simona Halep.
Okay, good. That's a point. That's a plus for me.
Okay.
And male player? Do you have a favorite?
I probably like Andy Murray best. I've known him since he was little. I first saw him when he was about 4, when my son was playing, his older brother was playing Jamie in a short tennis tournament. And also, Andy, it's supposed to be quick fire, sorry, but I'll tell this story anyway. Andy was, when he started to get good at about 17, he helped launch a program for teenagers called Raw Tennis. Now, it wasn't a program that flew because at the time it relied on teenagers going online. And the powers that be said, well, it'll never work because teenagers will never go online.
Yeah.
But it was before smartphones. And Andy was absolutely lovely with the kids. He was terrible with the media and grumpy and bad-tempered. That I cannot tell you how just delightful he was with us and with the children. He would have, you know, played with the kids and he did tricks and everything. He was great. So he'd have to be my favourite male player.
Who would you pick as a doubles partner?
Well, Andy can be a bit grumpy on court, so I probably wouldn't pick a play with him. I'd probably, do you know, I do like Dominic Inglot.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's just got a really nice personality.
Yeah, good character.
I think he'd be really nice. Although he's a bit tall, I'd probably, you know, be stretching my...
Would help a lot on court, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
What is your favorite shot?
Drop volley.
Drop volley.
And
that's exactly, I think, what was it him that he said? No, maybe not.
Oh, did he? I played a lot of table tennis, and so I would say my touch is quite good. I'm not so good at the back of the court.
Okay, fine. For doubles is perfect.
Yeah.
Do you prefer summer or Christmas?
Oh, summer.
Summer.
I love Christmas though, but I prefer summer.
What is your favorite film?
We went on a holiday with Billy Connolly.
Okay. Favorite?
And Jungle Book.
Okay.
The cartoon version.
What is your favorite book?
Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett.
Do you have a favorite song?
Oh, no.
No. What is your biggest fear, if you have any?
Saying something wrong.
Okay. Your favorite food?
Thai.
Country you'd move to?
Australia.
Nice. A lot of people gave that answer. That would be great. Phone call or text?
Phone call.
Night in or night out?
Difficult one when you've been in for like 9 months. A balance. I like a bit of both.
Nice, nice. And the last one would be Marmite or Brussels sprouts?
Oh, I hate them both.
Both. Yeah.
Absolutely neither.
Yeah, I can't choose between the two either.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, yeah, those were the quick fire questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And for accepting to do the live. I think a lot of, I definitely found out a lot of interesting things about yourself and about tennis.
Well, I look forward to meeting you again, Karina.
Yeah.
It's been great. You've
hopefully in person next time.
Yeah, no, that'd be nice. And I hope to meet some Middlesex people on my visits in the next few years.
Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Yeah, have an enjoyable lockdown if that is possible.
Yeah.
I guess we find a way, right?
Yeah.
To make it enjoyable.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.